You finally begin changing your life. You wake up earlier. You stop replying to the person who always pulls you backward. You begin exercising again. You start keeping promises to yourself. For a few days, maybe even a few weeks, it feels different. You feel lighter, more focused, more in control. You start thinking that this time you may actually escape the life you have been trying to leave behind. Then one difficult week arrives. You sleep badly. Work becomes stressful. Something disappoints you, and almost without noticing, you begin returning to the old version of yourself. You skip one workout, then another. You reopen the app you deleted. You send the message you promised yourself you would never send again. You fall back into the same routine, the same thoughts, and the same life you said you hated. And when you finally realize what happened, you ask the same painful question. Why do I keep doing this to myself? It feels like weakness. It feels like self-sabotage. It feels as though some part of you wants to fail. But what if that is not exactly what is happening? What if the part of you pulling backward is not trying to destroy you? What if it is trying to protect you? Because the brain does not always choose what is healthy. It does not always choose what is meaningful. It often chooses what is familiar. And sometimes familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. That is the trap. You believe you are trying to escape a bad habit, a bad relationship, or a life that no longer fits you. But beneath the surface, you are fighting something much deeper. You are fighting an identity that already knows how to survive where you are. Imagine someone who has lived in the same dark room for years. The room is uncomfortable. The air is stale. The walls are cracked. They complain about it every day. Then one morning, someone opens a door. Outside is light, space, and possibility. But there is also uncertainty. The person knows every corner of the dark room. They know where the floor creaks. They know how cold it becomes at night. They know exactly what kind of pain to expect. Outside the room, they know nothing. So instead of walking through the open door, they remain where they are. Not because the room is good, because the room is known. Human beings do this emotionally all the time. A person may stay in a relationship that repeatedly hurts them because they understand the pattern. The arguments are predictable. The apologies are predictable. Even the disappointment is predictable. Leaving may offer peace. But leaving also creates uncertainty. Who will I be without this person? What if I end up alone? What if the next relationship is worse? The familiar pain begins to feel safer than the unfamiliar possibility. The same thing happens with work. Someone may spend years in a job they hate. Every Sunday night they feel the dread. Every Monday morning they promise themselves they will leave. But applying somewhere else means risking rejection. Starting over means becoming inexperienced again. Success could mean more responsibility. Failure could confirm their worst beliefs about themselves. So the brain chooses the pain it already understands. This is not a rational calculation. It is a survival calculation. The brain constantly tries to predict what will happen next. Prediction makes the world feel safer. The more familiar a pattern becomes, the easier it is to predict, even when the pattern is painful. That is why chaos can become comfortable. That is why criticism can begin to feel normal. That is why someone raised around emotional instability may later feel strangely drawn to unstable people. Calm can feel suspicious when chaos is what taught you how to survive. Peace may feel empty. Kindness may feel fake. A healthy relationship may even feel boring. Not because health is boring, because the nervous system has confused intensity with connection. The body remembers what the mind says it wants to forget. This is one reason people return to old patterns during stress. When life is calm, your conscious mind has more control. You can plan, reflect, choose carefully, but when stress rises, the brain becomes less interested in growth and more interested in immediate safety. And safety usually means repetition. It reaches for the behavior it knows, the food that once brought comfort, the person who once made the loneliness disappear, the distraction that once silenced the thoughts. The habit may damage tomorrow, but for a few minutes, it soothes today. That relief teaches the brain something. Go back there. It works. This is how an old pattern becomes stronger each time you return to it. Not because the pattern solves your problem, because it reduces discomfort quickly. You may call it self-sabotage. Your brain may call it survival. But familiar pain is not the only thing pulling you backward. Sometimes, the people around you are protecting your old identity too. When you begin changing, not everyone celebrates. Some people feel threatened. Your growth changes the relationship. If you stop drinking, the friend who only knows how to connect through alcohol may feel rejected. If you begin setting boundaries, the person who benefited from your silence may call you selfish. If you become more confident, someone who was comfortable with your insecurity may suddenly become critical. They may say you have changed. And they are right. That is the point. But change creates tension because every relationship contains an unspoken agreement about who each person is allowed to be. The funny one, the responsible one, the failure, the victim, the person who always forgives, the person who never says no. When you leave that role, the whole system has to adjust. Some people will adjust with you. Others will try to pull you back. Not always consciously. Sometimes they will remind you of your past mistakes. Sometimes they will laugh at your new goals. Sometimes they will tempt you with the old routine. And sometimes all they need to do is say one sentence. This is not who you are. If you already doubt yourself, that sentence can feel like proof. You return to the old behavior and the people around you relax. The familiar version of you has returned. But the most powerful force pulling you back is not outside you. It is the story you tell yourself about who you are. Every person carries an internal identity, a collection of memories, labels, failures, roles, and beliefs. I am the one who always quits. I am the one who chooses the wrong people. I am the one who ruins things right when they start getting good. These statements may sound like honest observations, but repeated long enough, they stop being descriptions. They become instructions. The brain tries to behave consistently with the identity it believes is true. So when your actions begin contradicting that identity, discomfort appears. You start succeeding, but part of you feels like an imposter. You receive love, but part of you waits for rejection. You make progress, but part of you expects everything to collapse. The new life feels unstable because it does not yet match the story in your head. The old life may have been painful, but at least it proved the story right. This is why people sometimes create the very outcome they fear. Someone who believes they are unlovable may push away the person who loves them. Someone who expects failure may procrastinate until failure becomes unavoidable. Someone who believes they do not deserve success may create chaos just as things begin improving. The result is painful, but it is familiar. And familiarity gives the brain a strange kind of relief. See? Nothing has changed. The old story is still true. Escaping this pattern requires more than motivation. It requires grieving an identity, because every real transformation involves loss. You do not only gain a new life. You lose the version of yourself who knew how to survive the old one. You may lose routines, relationships, excuses, roles. You may even lose the sympathy or attention your pain once brought you, and that loss can feel terrifying. The old version of you may have been unhappy, but it was still you. It carried you through years you did not know how to survive any other way. It showed up when no better version could. So the goal is not to hate that version. The goal is to thank it for surviving. Then stop letting it choose your future. Change begins when you notice the moment familiarity disguises itself as safety. When you feel the urge to go back, pause. Ask yourself one question. Is this actually good for me, or is it simply known? That question creates distance between the feeling and the decision. The old pattern may still feel comforting, but comfort is not always evidence of safety. Discomfort is not always evidence of danger. Sometimes discomfort means you are finally leaving the room. The next step is making the new identity real through small, specific proof, not through declarations, not through motivation, through evidence. Think about the version of you that already exists on the other side of this. The one who woke up and didn't reach for the phone. The one who felt the urge to send that message and didn't. The one who stayed in the uncomfortable conversation instead of shutting down. That version of you doesn't need a perfect week to appear. They need one decision. One moment where you act like them before you feel like them. Do not only say you want to become someone who sets limits. Hold one limit today that you normally abandon. Do not only say you want healthier relationships. Leave one conversation that drains you without explaining yourself. Do not only say you want a different life. Make one decision today that the old version of you would have avoided. Each action becomes a memory. Each memory becomes evidence, and evidence is how the new identity replaces the old one. Not through a single breakthrough moment, through quiet, repeated proof that the new story is also true. At first, the new life will feel unnatural. That is not a warning sign. That is the sign. Familiarity is built through repetition. The old pattern feels natural because you practiced it for years, often without choosing to. The new pattern will need practice too. There will be days when you return to the old room. That does not mean the door has closed. It means part of you still remembers where everything is. Notice it, without judgment, without turning the return into more evidence against yourself. Then walk out again. Progress is not never returning to the old pattern. Progress is staying there for less time, recognizing it sooner, believing it less, choosing differently before the pattern becomes your life again. One day, something will shift. The chaos that once felt exciting will begin feeling exhausting. The criticism you once absorbed will begin feeling unacceptable. The behavior you once called normal will begin feeling foreign. That is when you will know the identity is actually changing, not because the old voice disappeared, because it no longer sounds like home. You are not weak because you keep returning to the life you hate. You are not broken. You are not self-destructive. You are being pulled by a nervous system, an environment, and an identity that learned how to survive there. That is not a character flaw. That is a survival system doing exactly what it was built to do. But survival is not the same as living. And the life that feels safest may only feel safe because you have suffered there before. The door is open. The old room is familiar. The new life is uncertain. No one can promise you exactly what waits outside. But staying is also a choice. And every day you remain in the familiar pain, you are paying for certainty with your future. So when the old life calls you back, and it will, listen carefully. It may sound like comfort. It may sound like love. It may even sound like who you are. But before you go back, ask yourself one thing. Is this where I belong? Or is this simply where I learned to survive? Because there is a difference. And you already know which one you deserve. If something in this video hit differently today, drop a comment and tell me what your old room looks like. What keeps pulling you back? I rate every single one, and if you want to understand why your brain keeps choosing fear over freedom, the next video is already waiting.